My name is Nancy Menges. I'm the director of the Hemispheric Security Project at the Center for Security Policy, and I welcome you all. Thank you so much for being here today. As you know, this is a briefing on Venezuela and their relationships with Iran, Russia, and China, and we have speakers who will address all of those issues. I will only touch briefly on Iran, as our next speaker, Mr. Farah, will go into more detail about the Iranian-Venezuelan situation. Iran's President Ahmadinejad visited Caracas in September 2006 and again in January 2007, and the two countries have signed more than 200 cooperation agreements in the fields of oil and gas, iron and steel, and infrastructure worth billions of dollars. An aspect of the agreements included provisions to allow the production and transfer of transfer to Iran of Venezuelan minerals, notably uranium. Iran has a huge embassy in Nicaragua, which is surrounded by high walls and protected from espionage. The embassy has 112 diplomats in a country with a population of approximately 5 million people. President Daniel Ortega has signed numerous agreements with Iran on matters related to energy, technology, and commerce. The Iranians have said they are going to build a deep water port on Nicaragua's Caribbean coast, which will be connected by dry canal to the Pacific coast. In Bolivia, President Evo Morales has also welcomed the Iranians, who are planning on operating a TV station to broadcast programming to the rest of South America. Iran, as we will learn, is a threat for many reasons, but its partnership with Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations already operating in the hemisphere make its presence especially troubling. Possible cooperation between Islamic organizations, the Chavez government, and groups such as the FARC in Colombia or other revolutionary grassroots groups could have a tremendous destabilizing consequences for the region, as such alliances could serve to conspire against regimes perceived to undermine the ambitions of Chavez and his allies. In fact, Chavez is funding training and trips for Latin American grassroots leaders to go to Iran. In terms of Russia, they are also changing the political landscape with their new strategic alliance with Venezuela. Recent arms sales and deliveries of Russian weaponry to Venezuela, as well as the upcoming Russian-Venezuela naval exercises, should be of serious concern to our policymakers. These weapons, which include fighter jets, attack and large transport helicopters, at least 5 Kilo-class attack submarines, approximately 600 armored vehicles, as well as 100,000 AK-47 rifles, will give Mr. Chavez opportunities to threaten countries such as Colombia, as well as to possibly interfere with U.S. drug interdiction efforts. Again, as Chavez's policy leads to confrontation with other countries, mainly Colombia, but also Peru, Mexico, and possibly Chile, it makes a lot of sense to assume that Chavez is seeking to equip the Venezuelan army with Russian weaponry and is seeking a military qualitative edge in the region. In other words, Russia will serve Chavez's ambitions, but at the same time, Chavez will serve Russia's competitive stand against the U.S. by establishing a strong presence in the southern hemisphere. Very little attention or notice has been given to the provocation of Russia's nuclear cruiser, Peter the Great, with the potential to carry 12 nuclear warheads now on its way to the Caribbean. With a ho-hum attitude on the part of our government, it only gives a green light to Putin and Chavez that we are not interested or going to do anything, and that there are no consequences to a continued Venezuelan military buildup. It should also be noted that Russia and Venezuela have had negotiations about the possibility of Russian help for a quote-unquote peaceful nuclear energy program. And so going on to China, whereas Putin's Russia literally makes a big splash and wants the world to know what it is doing, China moves quietly, but always very purposefully. Since the People's Republic of China took over control of the Panama Canal in 2000, China has been rapidly increasing its activities in Latin America. In the economic sphere, China has hundreds of deals with countries all over the region. President Hu Jintao's visit to several Latin American countries in 2004 and his promise to invest $100 billion in the region illustrates China's long-term interest as well as their increased presence in Latin America. It should also be noted that as Chinese influence in Latin America has increased, U.S. influence has diminished. However, China's economic interests and thirst for natural resources are only one aspect of her relations with Latin America. China has been extraordinarily successful in her geostrategic positioning in the Southern Hemisphere. It is a fact that China bribed the government of Panama and obtained through Hutchinson Whampoa 50-year leases at both ends of the Panama Canal. It is also a fact that the United States is the largest user of the canal, and 15 to 20% of our total trade, including 40% of our grain exports and 670,000 barrels of oil per day, come through the canal. China also has large port in Freeport, Bahamas, at the Lazaro Cardenas seaport in Mexico, and in 2009, as our base in Manta, Ecuador, is closed, Hutchinson Whampoa will be given the rights to a large port there. It should be pointed out that in the case of any kind of conflict between the United States and China, that strategic denial is something that China certainly could employ. And though there is supposedly a neutrality treaty regarding the canal, there's also a law called Panama Law Number 5, which actually gives practically total sovereignty over the canal to China. To conclude, China, has also been very effective in establishing various communication, spying activities in the region. They have major listening towers in Cuba. They have launched 2 communication satellites with Brazil, and they also are planning in Venezuela to launch a communication satellite in the near future, which will enable China from its own territory to view activities in the entire Caribbean, and also will give Venezuela a greater ability to spy on its own people. So that's a little food for thought. And before we have questions, I'm going to introduce the next speaker, and then we'll take questions after he speaks.